Aronra, this is a refutation that you cannot refute. You've heard many refutations of your ideal, yet you will not respond to them properly. And that is why I'm going to ask you one that you haven't heard before. The chances, how is it that the chances of a hurricane assembling a disambiguated human eyeball in the middle of a field in Iowa is exactly, I repeat, exactly the same as the chances of the same hurricane putting together a Boeing 747. Now, given that the chances are exactly the same, the chances are just as likely that that eyeball will be formed inside of that Boeing 747. Here's where my point starts. Imagine that, what if that eyeball, what's inside the Boeing 747, rolls out and it magically, by your standards, makes a copy of itself, and then them copies all start getting together and making more little eyeballs that start rolling around, and there's a whole species of eyeballs. Given that those eyeballs came, or that eyeball came from Boeing 747, why are there still Boeing 747s? That's my first point. My second point is transitional fossils. You still have failed to show any evidence of transitional fossils. What you need to show me, in order to convince me, is a transitional fossil between pork chop and a ribeye steak. Now I'll concede one point. I believe in microevolution. Things staying within their kind and changing within their kind. I could imagine a piece of Canadian bacon mutating and becoming another piece of Canadian bacon that might not be as dark or as thick cut. And from that, maybe there could be comes from that maybe like American bacon. But that's microevolution. It's still the same kind. You need to show me the transition between the pork chop, which has the bone on one side, and on the other edge has the fatty deposit, and how in the world it can be related to this ribeye steak where the bone is clearly in the middle and there's sort of a marbleized construct in the middle of it. They're clearly unrelated. You show me the transitional fossils between a pork chop and a ribeye steak, and I'll concede my ground. And here's number 3. Carbon dating. A lie that is carbon dating. Now, I have read up on the literature. I know how it's supposed to work. Within the carbon atoms that are in the atmosphere, there's a certain portion of them that are carbon-14 atoms that somehow are formed by solar activity acting on an isotope of nitrogen. And then that carbon-14 is incorporated into plant life, which some animals eat, and some animals eat those animals that eat it, and then all living things, well, now it's been discovered that all land-dwelling metazoans, not necessarily sea life, contain a proper proportion of this that can be determined, and that carbon-14 being a radioactive substance can be basically checked and looked at over time to see how much of it's gone in its half-life and all that business. I understand that. But here is my disproof of it from just this morning, from making breakfast. I broke an egg onto my griddle. I was cooking up my egg and a piece of bread. Now in that piece of bread you've got carbon atoms, you've got oxygen, you've got nitrogen, and you've got all these other complicated sort of biomolecular molecules making up this piece of bread, and I put that in the toaster, and I got called away for some reason or other, I can't remember. Well, that's not important. But what happened was I heard a smoke alarm, and I run back in the kitchen. The kitchen's full of smoke. And I unplugged the toaster because I ain't an idiot. And I took a knife and I pulled out that piece of toast, and it was nothing but carbon. All carbon. All that oxygen and nitrogen had been burned away, and some of them other molecules or atoms had also been dissipated through heat energy. But the thing is proportionately, there was more carbon now than there was before. So therefore, there was more carbon in that piece of toast than there was in that piece of bread that I had only put in the toaster 15 minutes previous. It's supposed to get less, people. You gotta answer me this. How is it that there's more carbon now than there was 15 minutes ago when I put it in the toaster? I await your answer. And I want something honest from you, because everything else I've heard from you so far is a bunch of jibberty-jaw, talking smart, using words to trick people. I don't buy into that. I have the simple facts, I have the simple evidence, I have this morning's breakfast to prove me right. You prove me wrong. Come on. Bring it on, Aron.